everyone. Welcome to the June 9th edition of Trips and Traps, the Belmont Stakes Week edition of Trips and Traps. Cool morning, absolutely pristine conditions for horse racing, Ernie.
Oh, it's so beautiful, and it's hard to contain our excitement with what's on tap for the next couple of days.
Well, we got a lot to look forward to, but first, let's take a look back, and we're going to start June 2nd, race 4, and we're looking at number 6, Secured Access. And I went back and forth about this race, Ernie. I like what you had to say about it, though. That's why we included it. And she's back here now. Broke well, drops back, I think, gets outrun. Probably what we're looking at is a filly that's going to want more ground.
I think that's what this is all about. And it's one of those, Mig, where I debated whether to, whether we should use or not. But, you look at her and you think of horses like Gold Shield, a horse for Shug, and this is a Shug-trained filly who is bred to go longer and really improve it longer. And this one has got secret status in her family, which means Dunkirk, and that is a Belmont Stakes type horse. You would think when this one gets more ground, she might be okay.
Yeah, and you can see she gets outrun. They go. It's a very legitimate pace. They go 22-1, 45 and change, and this filly just gets out-footed early. What I like, and it's something that you pointed out to me, is that she kept on coming and she ran through the finish line. And like many of Shug McGaughey's horses, just gives you that impression that distance is not going to be an issue.
Sometimes I wonder, Mig, like for instance, I'm going to keep going back to Gold Shield because that one surprised me, and a lot of people liked it. And I watched his races again, and I'm like, yeah, but he didn't really make any major moves through the stretch. But whether it's how Shug trains him or a combination of that and these pedigrees, they usually keep going. And here's the case where when she comes outside, it looks like she's got no horse, but at the end,
well, she actually kept finishing out. I think she got a very good ride and worked out a very decent trip. You're going to see she's starting to angle out, but he doesn't want to overcommit to the outside and be too wide. I think she was running, what I like to say, a little bit with the emergency brake on in behind horses. Not that she didn't have room, not that she was getting a bad trip, just some horses don't really go all out until they see empty racetrack in front of them.
Very interesting. And now, I would think, Mig, of course, if this was a real special filly, she could have tried. She would have gone around. I'm guessing, maybe not. But she comes back in, and you can see in the green silk she's going to come out for space and still keeps coming.
Well, and when she sifts out, I think this is when she's actually finding her best stride, and she actually finishes with interest. And I think you want to look for this filly. Again, this was a fast race. They went fast early. They went fast late. Horses weren't coming back. She was closing. And I really think we see her back 1 1/8 or better, and preferably maybe 1 1/4 or better. This is a horse you want to keep an eye on. Now, maybe we're pointing out the obvious, but I think this filly really is going to enjoy the further they go.
Look, sometimes we have a horse that looks, you've said it here. We've talked about horses, and you said this one looks more like a trap to me. Not the case this time, you don't think?
No, I don't think it's a trap. I wouldn't necessarily bet her back going a mile because I think she would be maybe, have the same thing kind of happen to her, get out-footed and just not have enough time to catch up, especially when they go a mile in 1:33 and 4.
No doubt about it. It looked like, for her, this was an impossible assignment.
But I do like the way she ran, and I think a filly we're going to keep an eye on going forward. Secure Access. Let's turn the page now, and we're going to go to June 3rd, race 3, and we're looking at Just Got Out, and he is number 4. And he kind of gets out-footed early. I don't think there's any fault of Joel Rosales. He tried to hustle him to stay in the game a bit, and the horse just got outrun the first few steps. But then what happens as we go forward, you're going to see the horse now kind of jumps in the bit, gets keen, and he's going to run up on heels. And I think it's really interesting to watch. I'm going to circle 2 things here. When he starts to steady, he's really almost in a very dire situation. You're going to see he's starting to steady here. Here's the horse, right? We'll clear that. Keep an eye on his hands, though. Right in here, how he's really up off the horse's neck because he's in a dire situation. He's basically running off on top of heels, and when horses clip heels, that's when they can fall.
This is a very interesting filly. We've been watching Just Got Out since the winter. This horse was a trip in the winter, and yet she's not a trap because she's won a couple of times. She's won with very wide trips. Very interesting horse. I don't know how much she can keep doing it, but you can see she never stops giving, Nick.
No, having a steady like that, now she has to go to the outside. She's wide. Not a particularly fast pace for a one-turn mile.
No.
23 and 4, 47 and 3. That's slow going one turn at Belmont Park. And it looks at one point like she's empty.
Yeah.
And then she keeps coming and she runs through the wire almost as though she found her stride late. I like Just Got Out. My question to you is now you can see how wide she is here. I mean, extremely wide after steadying down the backstretch. Does she create her own trips, maybe not having a very good mouth or a fairly soft mouth?
I wish I could tell you, because that is not in my area of expertise. That's the truth. What I do like about her, Mig, is that she doesn't not win. She has a couple of wins on her resume. She gets it done occasionally. I just wonder if she can keep delivering, and how long can she keep her form?
Okay, now we're seeing her here in behind horses, red cap with the white face. Now you see she's in behind horses and she's running off, and that's a desperate feeling for a rider to be up on heels like that, trying to get out. Now you're going to see he's going to wind up getting her to the outside, and now he can drop his hands again. But when you're running up on heels like that, all you're thinking is, I just don't want to hit the ground.
Isn't that something? And we've seen that way too often. It's a horrifying sight, and I don't blame Joelle for doing that at all. And coincidence or not, Nick, this is a filly who we know through the winter was winning with wide trips, those wide trips against the bias, and then one back after a wide trip with the bias. Maybe that's where she prefers to be.
Yeah, and that's good, guys. We've demonstrated how wide she was on the turn. We can cut off the head on there. But I think this is a difficult horse to ride. I really do. I think that she probably wants to get outside. She wants to run off in behind horses. And it's not like driving a car. You just don't tap on the brakes and the horse comes right back to you. Sometimes they can be headstrong, and I think that's what we saw here.
Very interesting. I make probably not a coincidence that she's had all those wide trips so far in her career.
I like this filly, but I'd like her with outside posts. If I was riding her, as soon as the overnight come out, I'd go, hope I'm outside.
Isn't that something?
So interesting. Yep. We'll keep an eye on Just Got Out, who wants to get out.
Yes.
Next time. We'll turn the page the same day, 8th race, and we're looking at two horses here, and we're looking at number 1, Hardest Core, and number 11, Long on Value. Now, Hardest Core's coming off a layoff. Only had one start last year, probably too short the distance. Long on Value's out here. Didn't get off particularly well, and we're going to keep an eye on the two, I think, very different kind of trips these horses get.
I really want to hear what you have to say about both of these, Mick, because they're very different. You're going to see Chris DiCarlo, who I think did the right thing. Maybe he didn't, Mick. I want to see what you have to say. His horse starts pulling him out there.
And keep an eye on the one here who gets in an enormous amount of trouble back here, because he gets headstrong after the horses, kind of established position. You saw you kind of hit the fence there. Now, Chris DiCarlo being outside, he has room, and his horse doesn't have cover, so he gets to running off. Maybe Hardest Core's outside. He makes that move.
This is now both situations. First, Chris. Mick, if he tries to grab early on, it could be a strangle fest, and then we're like, this guy's out of control. I think he made the right choice. No.
Well, I don't think he had a lot of choice. I think that horse was intent on going forward. He didn't have anything to block his forward progress, and Chris was trying to bargain with him. I'll give in a little bit, but I don't want to give in completely, and the horse took him. And this was a case I don't blame Chris at all. I just think a very headstrong horse. Hardest Core was very headstrong, but what options does Aurelius Vaz, excuse me, have in this situation?
What a trip, Nick. This horse was roughed on the backside. He's a big, strong horse. What's the story with him?
Well, I really think he's a horse that you want to bet back, particularly going further. He wants to go longer distances. He was had to shake off a little ring rust. He had all that trouble. He swings out, and now look where he is. He's out towards the middle of the course, and he's off a long layoff. Here's Longest Value, who's going to fight to the wire. You got to give him all the credit in the world. Here's Hardest Core, who's had, just to me, an amazing mystery tour at this point, and had a right to get a little bit tired off that layoff. Give me Hardest Core back going 1.25 miles. Give me Long on Value back going 1 mile.
I have to tell you, if I owned or trained Long on Value, I'd be very proud. Hardest Core, this is the horse who works from the tree to the bush. This is one of those horses with Ed Graham. I love this horse. One of my favorite stories. Let's go around the pond. None of these furlong poles or anything like that. Mick, Hardest Core.
Here now you see Hardest Core in the back there, kind of getting bounced
around.
Whoa!
Look at him back there.
Checked, bothered. He's still in tight there, and this was a very, very difficult trip, and partly because the horse was very keen. You can see how tight he is. He's basically pinned up against the fence, and eventually he's going to extricate himself and swing wide. But I think that illustrates it, guys, the trouble that he had down the backstretch. I definitely like Hardest Core back. I think he needed a run. I think it was too short for him. He had an amazingly tough journey. 1.25 miles. He's a horse that wants to be up on the pace anyway. Going 1.25 miles, he probably gallops him to death. And like you said, when you train from tree to tree or tree to bush, you're probably pretty fit.
This is one thing, Mick. I'm a little concerned he only ran once last year. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I love the connections. What a fun story. But that gives me a little bit of pause about Betty. But how can you? I mean, off a race like that, you know he wants to go long.
I will have no problem betting this horse back going
there you go.
a mile and a quarter or beyond.
All right. I love it.
Okay, let's move on to June 4th, and we're going to look at race number 4. And here's American Creed. Breaks from the inside. Horse has speed, but doesn't quite show the speed that I anticipated him showing. And I think this was a case of young Sebastian Saez not committing. You have to make a decision at this point. Go forward to hold your position or get shuffled back. He got shuffled back. It's like the difference between bacon and eggs. The chicken's involved, the pig's committed. He needed to commit, and now you see how far he gets shuffled back. And I think this goes against the grain of this horse's running style.
This horse has had, 8 career wins, and every one of those wins occurred when he was in the game early.
Yeah.
Well, every one. Now, I'm not even blaming whatever the jockey made a mistake. He didn't make a mistake. All I know is this horse needs to be in the game early. Has been a trip horse before, was against the bias, 2 back, and then came back to win. Another one like Just Got Out, who seems to maintain form, and you're going to see the horse finishes well.
He finishes very well, and again, like you're saying, going against what he naturally wants to do, be up in the game, involved. That's how he won his prior start, being up in the game, involved, fighting every step. And I think when you have the rail, it simplifies things. Really? I'm going.
Now, what if you have somebody, but Nick, you got a horse outside, everyone's going. You've committed, you got it. It's unfortunate, but you have to go?
To me, it's a game of chicken. Yeah. Who's going to blink first? If I'm inside of you and I make it clear I'm not backing out of this spot, maybe you back off. And if you don't, next time you probably will.
Now, there is the danger, of course. You're incinerated by going, but you're going to lose the other way. You're going to get shuffled back. You're going to lose. So either way, it's a tough situation.
And again, you're playing against your horse's strength.
Yes.
I want to play to my horse's strength. American Creed is a horse I want to play back.
Yes, I agree with that.
For sure.
Definitely.
Now we're going to go to another race that I think played against the horse's strength. We're going to turn the page on June 5th, the 7th race on the turf. We are going to look at Brimstone, who broke, obviously, very alertly.
Number 7?
Number 7. And I think Kendrick Carmouche made a mistake not allowing him to go forward in this case. And I'm a big Kendrick Carmouche fan. I think he's a terrific rider. I think he overthought this situation. We don't know what the instructions were.
Yes.
But I think at this point, this horse is crying out to run. Drop his head and let him run. Now, this is a horse that's had a lot of seconds, and maybe Kendrick's thinking, if I allow him to go on, he's going to be vulnerable to be picked off. I want to time my run so he makes the lead late. But they're walking, and you fought him to get back in his position, and now you're in an uncomfortable position and having to continue to fight him.
It's not even in this day and age. It's in the history of this game where sometimes jockeys chase a crazy long shot, as we saw in the Preakness, famously in the Preakness, but not famously in the Spectacular Bids Belmont. Here's just obviously a very small example of this. There was a 76-1 shot on the lead. That doesn't give you some concern that do I go after a 76-1? But the pace was slow, you said.
Yeah, but they go a half in 48-4, going 7 furlongs on a speed-favoring turf course. And Papa Freud, with Joe Martorez, a nice apprentice who's made a good impression, was looking to allow him to go to the lead. He wasn't sending to the lead. So at that point, you got to ride your horse, because I think Jomar would have said, I'll rate behind you. Now, you see, he's down inside. Now, at this point, I think the run's been taken out of him. And even though he does find room and he can kick on, they're finishing quickly.
Yes.
They're coming home in 11 and change.
Isn't that something?
And that's what allowed a 76-1 shot finish third. And I just think this was a case of maybe overthinking the horse's propensity to run second, and maybe just drop his head and let him roll and let the chips fall where they may.
As you say, it worked for Papa Freud. He got the show check 76-1 because he made the lead and was able to control things.
Yeah, I think Brimstone's a horse that wants to be left alone. I understand he has a lot of seconds, but in that particular case, you had an opportunity to seize control of the race. And a lot of times when you get a horse that has that a little bit of hang in him, maybe, that wants to be second, when you're in front, they've already broken that plane. Every time a horse gets to them, they're going to go on. Right. I think he would have been much better served to allow that horse to run on.
heard you talk more than a few times about how it can be tricky it is to ride a horse who finishes second a lot, doesn't have the willingness to win. So you really have to make a decision and have a plan when to use the run, when not to.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, being fair to Kendrick Carmouche, I think he was playing all of that in his mind. Yeah. How am I going to time my run? And then the pace wound up being glacially slow, and he'd have been better served to go forward. Easy to say from this desk.
That's it.
Easy to say from the stands. When you're not out there, we're playing Monday morning quarterback. But that's what we're here for. Trips and Traps at NYRAinc.com. We can always use your help.